Hi, good morning. It is Tuesday, March 22nd, and you are in your professional learning community, or PLC, and you are participating in class in this sort of virtual hybrid way. The slides that I am showing you during this screencast-o-matic video are also linked in Blackboard, so if there's anything that you want to steal from it and keep in your own collection as something that you might want to refer to later, please don't hesitate to do that. It is there for you. The very first thing that we're going to talk about is an activity that is also linked here in the Tuesday section of this week of Blackboard. And so you are going to have that infographic document open so that you can discuss that, okay? So you may want to pause this video and grab that document and then come back to this video. So your first activity is to sort of think about your teacher personality. This is very, very important, as Thursday we are going to take a deep dive into those qualities that are impacting you in the classroom, whether you are aware of it or not. So once you open up the infographic document, you're going to look at it and you're going to read each carefully. Though it is kind of silly, and it is definitely based on pop culture, I bet you will see the truth that is in it as well. And at the very top of the infographic document are some prompts that I want you to use for your discussion. You do not have to record the answers to these questions. I just want you to discuss them with your team, and it will help you to get to know each other a little bit better, and also to think about this idea of teacher stereotypes, teacher as hero, teacher as devil, and how teachers are portrayed in popular culture. So there was a survey that was done in 2020 of 1,000 teachers in Illinois. I'm very fascinated by research about teachers and teacher type because I think that it's important that we kind of understand how we are viewed in the community by our stakeholders, and those are parents, community members, administrators, other teachers, and students. And so all of them have a stake in what schools are and what they become. And so this particular survey looked at teachers in my home state in Illinois. I was born and raised in Illinois, and I went to college for my undergrad in Chicago at Loyola University. And so Illinois is very similar to Iowa in that it is a Midwestern state. It has both rural and urban communities. And while the larger cities in Iowa are kind of dwarfed by Chicago, they do have some of the similar issues. And this particular one tried to cover teachers across the state, and so it should give a relatively balanced view. Okay, so one of the types that was discussed and that came out in this survey is the moderate. The moderate teacher type is basically somebody who is kind of neutral. So in a staff room, in a staff meeting, in the hallway, in a team meeting, and in a PLC, this particular teacher is going to be sort of middle of the road, okay? And so doesn't really matter what their gender is or their age is. They are just tending to be in this particular category. This moderate teacher is motivated by a lot of things, and it can go from the love of their subject to the need for a job. So it is kind of a realistic viewpoint of why people become any particular role or job. It can be because that thing is fascinating to them, for example, math, or it could be that they feel like the thing that they are pursuing is basically a good job. And you do see this in lots of ways in other subjects too. So sometimes business majors are really fascinated by marketing or fascinated by leadership. But sometimes they look at it as a means to an end, a way to be successful, to make money, and to have the things that they want. The moderate, unfortunately, is usually counting the days to vacation, and they might actually have a calendar where they are marking off those days. And I knew lots and lots of teachers like this. They would actually start on day one and mark off the 180 days of school. Only 50% of moderates would actually recommend teaching versus 75% of another category that we're going to discuss. So that's not a very high number. Again, sort of middle of the road. They are 2 times more likely to actually leave teaching than 2 of the other kinds of categories, the idealist or the practitioner. Unfortunately, in my over 20 years of experience working in schools, I have seen a lot of moderate teachers, and they are by no means to be vilified. They are, in fact, kind of standard. There is a little bit of a danger in working with a moderate, especially if you are not a moderate type or when you're new. And that is because they aren't necessarily excited or thrilled. They're not actually taking a stand either way. They're kind of marking the box, checking the box, marking the road, and moving along. The positive thing about a moderate is that they are not going to cause controversy or chaos or drama, which, to be honest, is sometimes important. And having a moderate on your staff or working with one isn't going to bring the kind of problems that some other types can bring. So this is just something that I want you to consider, that of these 1,000 teachers in Illinois, many of them kind of saw themselves as moderates. The rationalist. The rationalist is a different teacher type that came out through the survey. Basically, they are very rational in their thinking, or pragmatic, okay? So they joined the profession for very practical reasons. And this is where you kind of get the good student becomes the teacher. They have enjoy working in a school because they liked school as a student. They were good at it, and so they decided to pursue it. They're very, very pragmatic or serious about the pay and benefits and vacation and pension. And all of these things are, they are just accepting of them. They knew getting into it what it was going to be about. So it's important to understand that teacher pay is paid out for 10 months of work. It is stretched out over 12 months in many school districts. And I know teachers who receive pay all year, though they only work, of course, those 10 months. There are other teachers who only take pay for the 10 months, and then they have another position in the summer where they get paid. So it just depends on the way that you budget. But you have to be pretty pragmatic about that and understand that you are actually not being paid for 12 months of work. So if the numbers, the teacher's salary seems low, I think it's important that you know that you are not being paid during spring break, Christmas break, or the summer. However, there are some very good benefits to being a teacher in terms of pensions. And if you work for a state agency, there are many benefits to that. And then, of course, the vacation time. However, the rationalist, because they really joined for practical reasons, can become really frustrated when things are difficult. And so this is where you see that in the first 5 years, rationalists, 50% of them consider leaving the profession because, let's be honest, any role can be challenging, but schools, especially in 2022, can be very difficult places to be. And I'm sure that as you've been going through your teacher prep program during this pandemic time, you have heard and seen some of the challenges that teachers are facing. So the rationalists who came in for practical reasons, who believed that their decisions were based in fact, who believed that they thought they knew what it was about, working at a school because they liked being a student there. The kinds of challenges that they are facing, because the passion is not necessarily driving them, it can make them basically leave the profession. The practitioner. So a large percentage of those who were surveyed in Illinois decided that they fit the role of the practitioner. So the practitioner is really focused on the practice of educating. And our teacher program at Northwestern College, both our undergrad and graduate programs, are practitioner-based programs, which means that we are teaching you not just the theory of education, but actually the practice of it and how this is going to play out in an actual classroom. And so the practitioner is thereby focused on student development. And it's not really contributing to society. They're not necessarily idealistic in this way. They are looking at how to help students learn. A practitioner is very much committed to the job, and they really enjoy the actual actions of teaching. So you would be a practitioner if you get excited about having a practicum and you're out there doing that practical work to learn how to be a teacher. Because the practitioner is really focused on student development, they really, really want to be professionally developed. So they want to grow. They want to learn new curriculums. They want to learn new strategies. They are also very focused on advancing. So the practitioner is going to pursue a master's degree or even a higher degree. They might be focused on advancing in their career, so becoming a head teacher or a departmental leader. They may want to become an administrator or an instructional coach. The practitioner, because they are really committed to developing and committing to the job, they might choose a school that's really based on its reputation or its pay. So many times students will look in the local area and figure out that one district pays more than another district, or they have better buildings and facilities, or their sports teams are actually more talented or win state titles. So those are the kinds of things that a practitioner might consider when they pick a school. The other is student behavior. So they may look around and say, these particular students match the kinds of students I grew up with, and their behavior is based on a certain set of values or a certain set of rules. Many times those that get into private education, or which can be Christian education, or it doesn't have to be, it could just be private, they actually choose this from a practitioner point of view because they believe that student behavior can be and is sometimes better because the rules and the value systems are more homogeneous in those types of schools. The practitioner is also looking to see if they can get promoted within that building, and also the opportunity to be a coach. And this is not necessarily a sports coach, but a coach of instruction, so an instructional leader. The practitioner may select a school that has the sports team that they want to teach or coach. Maybe perhaps it's their old school. So a practitioner might even choose the school that they went to in order to work there because it fits, again, their purposes to define their practice. The only problem with the practitioner that you may see as you get into schools as your first role is that 75% basically would leave the school for a better opportunity at any given point. Now, this is not always possible depending on what state you're in or district, because some states and districts will not let you break a contract. However, there are reasons that are allowable. For example, you move to a different state to seek employment. Perhaps your spouse does or you do, and there is a move. So there's lots of ways sort of around that. Not that we want you to break your contract, we never do. But be aware that the practitioner is looking for something better Okay, they're always looking for a better situation. Now, let's talk about the idealist. So, in the 1,000 teachers, many of them were idealists. They tended to be from all different aspects, so from K to 12. There wasn't necessarily more or less in elementary or secondary. The focus of the idealist is to make a difference. They believe that teachers make a difference in society, and they are always looking for how to use this role to change the world. Social justice is a really key part of this role. So the idealist is looking at those issues in society that show inequities. So perhaps students with disabilities or students of color. They are very concerned that all students have the same equal opportunities, and they are going to fight for those things. Now, they might fight them in a small way, right inside their classroom, for one or two students, or they may be somebody who looks at things on a more statewide or national level. The idealist is in love with their subject. So if they are in love with math, they decided to teach math. If they love reading, they decided to teach reading. They really love the subject, and it doesn't necessarily translate like the practitioner does into what that work looks like on paper. So they just are like, poetry is their jam, and they want to teach kids about poetry. There in the idealist is really this idea that working with young people is something that they want to do. So the idealist probably chooses jobs as they're going through school that allow them to work with young people, like in a camp or an after-school program. So while they might be able to make more money working at Target, the idealist would feel that that's sort of a waste of their time. The positive thing is that the motivation for the idealist doesn't waver when put under pressure like some of the other types. So in fact, 35% of idealists wouldn't leave teaching no matter what, no matter how bad it got. And those are really the teachers that are teaching through the pandemic. And they're hanging tough, right? They're still there because they are being driven by something that is larger than themselves and just their situation. They can see down the road that things will change. And so they're going to kind of hold out for that to happen. That is compared to 25% of all teachers who wouldn't leave. So if you look at all those other teacher types, 25% of them wouldn't leave, whereas 35% of idealists wouldn't leave. Okay, now as a team, I would like you to stop this video, and I would like you to go back through the slides, have somebody pull it up, and I want you to talk about each type and which one you feel like you are most like at this point. And understand that this is not about a hierarchy. There is not a better or worse type. All of the types are necessary to keep a school running, and all of the types make sense for the person who gravitates that way. And so I think it's very, very important that you understand that there is nobody that took the survey who at the end of the road, once they picked what they were, made a huge change. So if they were practitioners, they didn't look at the results of the survey and say, oh my goodness sakes, I really need to be more idealistic. That's not what it was about. So I would like you to pause this video, pull up the slides, and just review them with your team and kind of talk about each one and where you think you fall. Do you have some of the characteristics of each of them right now, or are you actually leaning towards one or the other? Okay. So now that you have done that, you're back here at the slides, and you are going to talk about if this is fact or fiction. Okay, so there's a statement, and then I want you also to think about what percentage. People choose teaching because of holidays. Fact or fiction? go ahead and pause and discuss this with your team. I also would like you to think about what percentage of teachers believe this is true. Okay, so 17% of people believe that they choose teaching because of holidays. It's a pretty low number. I think in America, we tend to kind of make that a joke, like, oh, teachers get summers off. Truthfully, teachers do a lot of work in the summer, and it is not, in fact, off. But really, only 17% of people choose teaching because of holidays, which is a good thing because it's a very important job, and you certainly can't be just marking time from holiday to holiday. Okay, this statement. Teachers would recommend the job to their younger selves. So after you've been teaching for a while, looking back, would you say to your younger self, if you could meet them, hey, I think you should become a teacher? What percentage, first of all, is this fact or fiction? And what percentage of people feel this way? 52%. 52% of people would recommend the job to their younger selves. So even those teachers that might be struggling, they still understand that they were sort of called to this work, and so they would be more committed to that. Oops, I just realized that popped up. So anyway, teachers would recommend the job to their own child. I think this is so fascinating because I absolutely did not recommend that my daughter Grace become a teacher. I really felt that she didn't have the personality traits to do it. She has very little experience working with children because she's an only child. So she didn't even have those siblings in the house in order to do that. And her interests are really not in the area of teaching. And so I would never have really recommended her to become a teacher. And it's not because I didn't love my job, but I think it's because I didn't feel it was a match for her. However, 34% of teachers, only 34% of teachers would recommend the job to their own child. So they would recommend it to their younger self, but they don't believe that it is a good thing for their own child to do as a role or as a job. And I'll be honest, I have seen this number become even less than that 34%. I think that teaching right now is hard. And there are times when I watch each of you, and I'm so thrilled that you're developing and that you want to be teachers. But I also know that there are going to be some hard days ahead. And so just like any job, there are going to be good days and bad days. But I think sometimes, especially in America, teachers are sort of vilified and not given the respect that they deserve. And so when it's your own child, you kind of want them to avoid that kind of stress or pressure. And so again, 34% would recommend the job to their own child, which leaves, over 70% wouldn't. Teachers quit because of student behavior. So this is actually kind of fictional in that it's not really as many as you think. So only 27% of teachers, after they quit, stated it was because of student behavior. So of the 100% that quit, this is about a third of them. I think that is a pretty standard number that has not really waxed and waned through the years. So though people are saying, oh, student behavior has really kind of ticked up in terms of bad behavior because of the trauma of the pandemic, to be honest, there's always been student behavior problems depending on what school you're in and depending on your experience level as a teacher and the types of students that you work with. And so I think this is a pretty fair number, and I doubt that it has gone up that much. The real reason and a huge percentage of why people actually quit is because of workload. Teaching is one of those jobs that you could do 24/7. So you could get up early, do work in your classroom. After school, you could coach or tutor in order to have a second job or because of doing something that you love. But still, when you get home, you still would have some work to do for either to prep or to grade. And then on the weekends, you're prepping or grading. Now, there are lots of ways to balance that workload and still have, a personal life. However, I think teachers struggle with this more than other professions. I was not always a teacher. My undergrad is in business. My first jobs in business, or first jobs after college, were in business. I worked for several big Fortune 500 companies. I did sales and marketing. I traveled with my work and became a consultant and a trainer. So I have experienced a profession outside of teaching. And even in my busiest time in business and consulting, even when I was traveling nationally throughout the week, I did feel like I had more time off than I did when I became a teacher. The good news for me is that I was definitely an idealist who just absolutely loved teaching, and especially special education students. And I was very pragmatic about that decision to become a teacher because I had done another career and I didn't find it to be fulfilling. However, when I look at the amount of time that I spend, even as a college professor, prepping and grading, I see my friends in other professions who do not have that kind of always on, always prepping, always working, always grading. And it can be very difficult. And so of those that quit, most people quit because of workload issues and just the inability to balance and have boundaries about their work. 43% of people in the survey stated that they quit because of their leadership. And I think that this is very, very important. And as you can see, the numbers don't all add up to 100, and that was because many teachers had multiple reasons why they believed that they were going to quit. And so I think administrators struggle with this a lot. You don't usually quit a job, you quit the leader of that job. And especially now in 2022, where it's kind of called the Great Resignation across all different categories of work. People have left because they realized in the pandemic that there were other opportunities. They were not really as trapped in their job as they felt that they would be. And so they decided to look elsewhere. And when they did, they realized that the toxic environment that they were working in was actually a problem. And so they decided to leave. And often a toxic environment in any workplace is coming down from the leader, and perhaps it is their inability to lead, or it is their own personal issues, or could be a lack of experience. The slideshow has now ended, and I'm going to have you pause. And then you're going to go back into the Blackboard and pick up the next responsibility.